Good evening and welcome. This is the December 21st, 2020 regularly scheduled school committee meeting. I will call the meeting to order. It is 6 p.m. We do have the entire committee in attendance this evening. This meeting is being held remotely in accordance with the Governor of Massachusetts, March 12th, 2020, order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. Okay, so with that, we have some meetings for approval this evening, if somebody wants to start with that.
Move to approve the December 7th, 2020 executive session meeting minutes.
Motion made by Bill,
I'll second.
second by Beth. Discussion. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. That motion carries 5-0. One more set, please.
Move to approve the December 7th, 2020 regular session meeting minutes.
Motion has been made by Bill,
Second.
second by Antonella. Discussion.
These were well done, Kathy. Thank you.
Yes.
Without any further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. That motion carries 5-0 as well. Okay, we are moving right along. This is the time in our meeting where we have an opportunity for visitors to address the committee. This is a time to make a statement if you'd like, not a time for questions necessarily. If you are in our Zoom meeting and would like to speak, now would be your opportunity. And if you can raise your hand, then Jamie at LCAT will bring you in one at a time. Hey, Chris, you there? You're on mute if you're there, Chris.
On mute. Oh, here we go. Sorry about that.
Yep, go ahead.
All right. Well, my name's Chris DeVoy. I'm from town. I have 4 kids. One graduated in 2019, 2 at the high school now, and one will be there in 2 years. I'm calling to encourage the school committee to support our kids, the high school kids, to play winter sports, to compete. Starting on January 11th. But before I go through a couple of quick points, I know you guys had a marathon meeting last week, so it won't take up too much time. I want to thank the committee for allowing my family and many others the choice to return to in-person learning in January. And I know Mr. Smith, the leadership team, will do a good job and they'll do it safely, so thank you. In regards to giving the green light to winter sports, I just want to say the fall sports season at the high school was great. It gave my kids, several others, the outlet to see their friends, socialize after being on the computer all day. It was great. Mr. McGee, Mr. Page, the coaches, staff, they did a great job in the fall. And I know they can do it again this winter. I've coached a lot of these kids who are at the high school now in youth basketball. I'm on the East Long Meadow basketball board, and any kind of season would be tremendous. Some of the modifications to these sports definitely would be a little bit quirky, but at least they're competing. And I even know some of the kids who are going to stay remote are going to compete in sports, just like they did in the fall. And most importantly, I think we really need to do this for our seniors. These kids, it's been a rough year. Some of them, they play their whole life for their senior year. So I really would love to see them to get back. Some of the kids who play sports is the only reason they go to school. So I really, really hope you guys will consider and give the green light and allow Mr. Page, Mr. McGee, the opportunity to do that. And lastly, starting on January 11th, I think is a good time. It's the week before we start our hybrid in person, which will give the kids plenty of time to understand all the protocols and the different rules and everything before they show up in person. So so thank you guys for your time. Appreciate it. Definitely hope you'll give the green light to our kids. So Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Thank you very much.
Okay, Chris, thank you for checking in tonight. Same to you, and appreciate your words this evening. Hey, Josh, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well,
Um,
thanks.
Great.
Go
Well,
ahead.
thank you. Thanks very much. And so let me just begin by saying I really want to thank all of you on the school committee. You have a difficult job in normal times, and this is extraordinary. So I really do appreciate all that you're going through and the difficult decisions you have to make. In many ways, I want to just echo what Chris had mentioned about giving the kids an opportunity to play. I've got two girls at the high school, a senior and a freshman, and I just want to really highlight three quick things with regard to this decision. So I know, similar to what Chris was mentioning, that when my girls had an opportunity to play soccer and field hockey this fall, it was really sort of the happiest that I had seen them. And as my older daughter, who's a little competitive, said to me, playing is really keeping me sane. And I think that there was a real air of normalcy to this because of sports. And we talked a lot about being smart, following the rules, and they were able to complete their season. So I think that, there is a responsibility as well on the parents to make sure their kids are respectful of what's being put out there if folks do make this decision. The second thing I would just simply say is obviously playing a sport isn't mandatory. And so, certainly for those folks who are uncomfortable, they don't have to participate but I think for those of us who are willing and understand the risks and want to give our kids that opportunity, I think, I'd ask you to consider that. And especially as Chris mentioned as well, my daughter being a senior, having played basketball the whole time, is really, wanting very badly to play and does understand the risks, et cetera. And then finally, for me, the fact that the MIAA made this decision about playing winter sports with their modifications, gives me a level of confidence. I know they've studied this far more than I have, in terms of thinking about the different pieces involved. And so I think if it's good for them, it's good for me. And I think as long as people go in eyes wide open about the risks. So I would just ask you all to give them the opportunity. And thank you very much for your time.
Okay, Josh, thank you as well for your time this evening and your willingness to speak on this issue. Okay, currently I don't see any more hands raised. Again, this would be your opportunity if you want to speak tonight. Jamie, if you're in agreement, we're going to move forward with the rest of our agenda. Okay, we will move forward. Next up, we have an opportunity a chance for the committee to have committee or subcommittee communications. Would anybody like an opportunity to do that tonight? No? Okay, not too long since we've been here last, so we will move right along then. So we will move forward with our first item of discussion tonight, which is about winter athletics, a potential season of January 11th through February 28th. We have Mr. Page and Mr. McGee in the audience. If they could come out of the dark, please. Good evening, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us tonight. If you want to go through what the season potentially could look like and some of your thoughts, we would greatly appreciate it.
Could I get sharing rights just so I can share my screen and go through the presentation?
I think Jamie may have to give you those.
You should be all set.
Perfect. Thank you. Right. Okay. All right. So just to get us started here, let me just get the presentation going. First, as always, we appreciate everything that you guys are doing and appreciate you giving us the platform tonight to talk about a potential winter sports season. It is definitely going to be modified on a number of levels, both within certain sports that we're offering. And there are also a couple of sports that we're going to be unable to run this winter. So it is definitely going to be a smaller program that we're hoping to offer our athletes this winter. And to that point, I'm going to let Mr. McGee just kind of walk through what programs we are looking to run and talk to you guys a little bit about how some of those sports might be modified.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk to you about each individual sport. Feel free to stop me if you have questions, and you'll definitely have the chance to have questions at the end also. The sports that we're talking about for the winter are basketball, ice hockey, swimming, and ski team. Like you said, the winter athletic season is January 11th to February 28th. Facial coverings will be worn at all times, excluding mask breaks and while swimming in the water. All personal items will remain in the athlete's bag, and athletes will bring their own water and hand sanitizer. There will be limited shared equipment, and sanitizing breaks will occur based on each sport's guidelines. Handshakes and huddles within 6 feet will not occur. There will be limited or zero spectators. There will be limited or zero use of locker rooms. Competitions will be within bubbles, very similar to the fall, so it's a very similar blueprint to the fall. And the two winter sports that we're not running during their traditional season are indoor track, which has been postponed to March 1st, and wrestling is scheduled to begin on April 26th. So if we take a look at each individual sport.
And if I can just chime in one quick comment, Mr. McGee. So the reason a lot of people might think indoor track is a sport that could run, the reason why indoor track is not running is because the facility we typically use is not allowing the PVIAC to rent the facility. We typically run that at Smith College, and they're not running any rentals at the moment.
So if we take a look at each individual sport, the first sport is skiing. It's designated by the EEA as a lower risk sport. Ski lodges will be closed to teams, and the athletes' transportation will be used as the warming and changing area. There'll be a limited number of teams on the mountain at one time. Masks will be worn at all times, 6 feet social distancing at all times, and there'll be approximately 5 to 6 PVIAC bubble ski races scheduled. Swimming is also designated by the EEA as a lower risk sport. Competitions will only be dual meets, so only against one other school, and schools do have the option of competing in virtual meets. So depending on the facility, our facility is really small. The virtual meets would be a good option for our facility, and schools with larger facilities could actually invite the school to compete at the pool. Masks worn at all times in the pool area, but not while swimming. There'll be a defined entrance and exit area of the pool water. Individual masks will be collected on starting blocks and placed in Ziploc bags and delivered to swimmers after exiting the pool. And there'd be approximately 8 to 10 PVIAC bubble swim meets scheduled for the season. The next sport is basketball. This is designated by the EEA as a higher risk sport. Face masks will be required at all times in the facility, and while playing, there will be designated mask break areas. Roster sizes are limited by the MIAA to 12 game day participants. The jump ball at the start of the game would be eliminated. There'd be a reduction of players rebounding during free throws. Baseline out of bounds plays will be replaced with sideline out of bounds plays. The 10-minute halftime that's normally in the locker room would be eliminated. The end of game foul scenario will be changed to tagging a player and notifying the referee that you're looking to foul. 8 to 12 PVIAC bubble basketball games would be scheduled. And at ELHS, there will be no practicing against different levels in order to minimize the contact between teams. So JV would not be practicing with varsity. Everybody would be in their own gym for their practice times with no crossing over of levels. The next sport is ice hockey. It's also designated by the EEA as a higher risk sport. Face masks will be required at all times in the facility and while playing. Roster sizes are limited by the MIA to 20 participants. Team bench areas will be expanded to allow for 6 feet of social distancing while on the bench. Only one defensive and one offensive player will be permitted in any scrum along the boards. Opposing players will begin each face-off 6 feet apart. 8 to 12 PVIAC bubble ice hockey games would be scheduled. And that's in regards to both hockey teams, but we also currently have 3 ELHS female ice hockey players who are interested in playing on the Longmeadow Cooperative Ice Hockey team. So the past 10 years or so, we've always sent 1, 2, or 3 female ice hockey players to that cooperative team. That cooperative team is going to be a little bit different this year. So the Longmeadow Ice Hockey Cooperative Team, Longmeadow is the host school, and the team would include all school committee approved ice hockey players from Longmeadow, Agawam, Minnechaug, Westfield, West Springfield, Southwick, East Longmeadow, and Pioneer Valley Chinese Immersion School. School committees from all of those schools are still voting on if they will approve their players to play on this cooperative team. ELHS traditionally has 1 to 3 players compete on this team each year. Currently, ELHS has 3 student athletes interested in playing on this team. This team will have approximately 10 to 12 games against other teams in the state. Play would be limited to Massachusetts, but the PVIAC does not have a girls ice hockey league, which is why this team would have to play against other teams in the state. The first practice for this team is scheduled to begin on January 4th. This is earlier than the PVIAC league start date of January 11th because it is competition against the entire state and not just the PVIAC. And other girls ice hockey teams have already started practicing. So that team is a little bit different, and I wanted to let everybody know about that team. That's the teams that we're talking about for the winter. I do want to talk about spectators, transportation, and a potential waiver, but I'm wondering if you wanted to go over questions on this or if you wanted me to talk about spectators now.
Does anyone in the committee have questions so far? Okay, Kevin.
I had
I'm
one
sorry.
question.
Go ahead, Sarah. Yeah.
In the fall, we also had to talk about model, meaning if we were going to be competing, and it sounds like we are against other teams, if we were running more of like a rec, when we made the decision in the fall, was that for the entirety of the year, or was it season by season, or is that not part of the conversation for winter sports?
So it can definitely be part of the conversation. My personal feeling is that competition against other schools was really beneficial for the student athletes. If this was not approved, then I would definitely want to present a secondary option. But I guess to answer your question, this would be Mr. Page and I's primary recommendation. And if the school committee didn't approve this and asked us to come back with another recommendation, we would be more than willing to do that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was understanding. So this is based on the recommendation that we would be competing with other schools within the PVIAC, not so much about like the model by which we're competing.
Correct. And the PVIAC model that we did back in the fall was limited to Longmeadow, Minnechaug, Ludlow, Chicopee, and Chicopee Comp. So it'd be a very similar bubble group of teams. It might vary a little bit, but we would only be playing against a limited number of schools.
Okay.
Kevin, you spoke about locker rooms and the limited use, specifically with swimming. I would be concerned sending student athletes home wet. Are they going to have the opportunity to get dry and change? Would they?
Yep. Definitely. So the locker rooms would be locked before practice and after practice, but for every sport, let's just say it's swimming, at the end of swimming, the coach would be able to go and unlock the locker rooms. I would have taped areas in the locker room where the athletes would be designated changing areas, so they'd have the opportunity to change in the locker rooms in those taped designated areas. We would limit the number of athletes that went inside the locker room, make sure that they're socially distanced. As soon as everybody got changed and was done, the coach would lock back up the locker room. So the supervision would definitely be there. It would not be an open locker room, but it would definitely be available for swimming after swim time. And then also other winter sports at the end of the school day, those athletes would need to get changed for their practice also. So if an athlete had a 2:15 practice, the coach would meet them at the door, socially distanced, designated changing areas. All the athletes would come out, and then the door would get locked up again. So it would definitely be monitored, and tape would be put down where they can get changed.
The other question I would have would be about the schedule. As you know, our hybrid model, we're going to bring more students back in the 19th. This would potentially start on the 11th. can we ensure that student athletes would not be roaming the high school specifically because we'll have staff back in the week prior? So I don't necessarily wouldn't want them commingling before we actually start the hybrid model. Is that there are plans in place to isolate the gym and the pool from the rest of the building?
Yeah, definitely. So we had a good practice of this during the fall because we had volleyball. The coach would always meet the athletes at the door. So the entrance, when they're coming that first week, would actually be near the tennis courts. So we learned from the fall not to have them enter through the main entrance because then there's a cross-contamination potentially with the school lunches. So they would enter, there's a door over near the tennis courts. They'd enter through that door. The coach would meet them at the door. Each team or each group would be limited to 15 athletes. They would go directly to their practice space. When their practice is over, they would exit through the pool hallway door. So it would be separate entrance, separate exit. And also our swim coach has been able to practice this model because he's also been coaching the rec department. So we do have 5 teachers who are winter coaches, 2 boys basketball, 2 girls basketball, 1 in swimming. So we have teachers that know the facility, that know the expectations. A lot of them have coached in the fall before. So we'll have a good process and supervision during that time.
Okay, thank you. Do
Yeah.
you want to continue on?
Oh, I had one more question.
Yep, go ahead, sir.
And the difference also from fall to now is that we'll have some athletes, obviously, who will be on site, depending upon what week and if their family has opted them into the hybrid model. How will that impact practice times in terms of some students will need to be transported on site in order to begin their practice? So there could be, a waiting period, I'm guessing, between the ones who are already on site and then the individuals who are going to have to close out from their school day and then arrive on site to begin practice.
Yep. So with swimming and basketball, the earliest we would start practice would be 2:15. So that would allow the athletes who are ending class to go to the locker room, get changed, go out to the area and start warming up with their coach. The athletes who were coming from home, that would give them a half an hour after the end of the school day. They would actually get changed at home, and they would come to the school ready to go so that they're not coming into the locker room. So that gives the athletes from home 30 minutes, and it also gives the athletes that are here plenty of time to rotate through the locker rooms with supervision.
And if I can just chime in as well, we're going to have very limited numbers of students who are going to be practicing right at 2:15. The rosters that the MIAA is setting for us are relatively small.
Mm-hmm.
We're only talking about, let's say a freshman boys basketball practice, and then our swim program might be running at the same time. Any students who are not participating directly on those in those practices at 2:15 are going to be asked to leave the building just so we can make sure that everything is supervised, that everybody's following the safety and sanitation protocols. So there will be very few number of students in the building after 1:45 when that bell rings.
Yeah, and just to expand on what Mr. Page said, I would say the maximum number of athletes that would be in the building at any given time would be 45. It would be at the absolute maximum. And in each practice space would be approximately 12 to 15 athletes.
I have a question to kind of go off of that. You're going to have students who are not going to have busing. You're going to have, they're going to be in, and they're not really going to be able to get picked up for maybe a half hour, an hour, 20 minutes, whatever it is. So putting aside the athlete question, I guess, what happens if you have students who have to wait for parent to get out of work or whatever it might be? Are you allowing the students to stay? Are they getting kicked out of the building at a certain time? What's happening?
No, unless a student is participating in a practice that is beginning immediately after school, or if a student is getting extra help, which is going to be ending at 2:45, where they could stay with the teacher until 2:45, kids are going to be asked to exit the building, similar to how they do it at other schools. It's not like other years. Unfortunately, we're not going to be allowed to have kids just kind of hang out and, sit in the cafeteria and stick around for a couple hours waiting for practice.
Okay. And is this going to be made clear? I mean, I know that I'm off topic now. This is going to have to be made clear to people before they make a decision because, they may feel, okay, I can pick you up at 2:15, but we're in the winter months now, and that could be, what are you gonna do when you got a kid just hanging there? So just a thought.
Yeah,
for all of us to think
we
about.
already have a plan for supervising the building in the afternoons. And in those situations, obviously, if a kid is waiting for a parent, the parent doesn't show, just like we would do in other years, we'd pull the kid into the office, make phone calls home, and make sure that kid has transportation before we send them on their way.
Okay. All right.
All right, Kevin, why don't you go forward with the rest of the slide, or Frank with the slides, please?
All right, so as far as spectators go, the Massachusetts EEA indoor competition capacity limits, this is a quote from the EEA. If an indoor facility has a spectator viewing area which allows for at least 6 feet social distancing between spectators and the presence of spectators plus players, coaches, referees, and facility activity workers, does not cause a facility to exceed more than 50% of the maximum occupancy for the indoor facility, then spectators for players under 21 years old are allowed to attend. So we were able to get clarification that this is really what the state guideline is for spectators for high school sports. But of course, it's 100% up to the school committee to determine with spectators. So spectators are limited to 2 spectators per participant. The EEA does say that it has to be immediate family members. Spectators must wear facial coverings and maintain 6 feet of social distancing at all times. So as that relates to our sports teams with the high school basketball program for home games, I measured it out, and we had volleyball as an example. Home games, we can safely host 2 home spectators per participant. We will not be allowed to have spectators at away games. That's already been determined by the PVIAC. And the reason why we could potentially have 2 home spectators, which is different than volleyball when we had 1 spectator, was basketball we'll only have 12 game day participants, where volleyball we had rosters of 18, 19. And once we doubled those numbers, then it became almost impossible to socially distance those spectators in the stands. As far as swimming goes, this is a little bit more concerning for home virtual meets. So if the other team is not coming to our site, I measured the bleachers. It's a 90-foot set of bleachers. We can safely host 15 spectators, but we could have potentially a roster of 30 swimmers. We will not be allowed to have spectators at away games. Live streaming would definitely be a priority for swimming, but the absolute most that we could possibly socially distance in the pool area at the top level of the bleachers would be 15 spectators. Again, I measured, there's much less room than in the gymnasium. And then as far as ice hockey and the ski team goes, all of these competitions are off-site, and the PVIAC is still developing their spectator policy. They would determine what the spectator policy would be at away ice hockey games and at away ski mountains for those meets. So the next slide, as far as the transportation, every effort would be made by myself to provide transportation for the ELHS winter athletic teams. I have been in contact with the transportation department. I'm still waiting to find out exactly how many buses we would have. If transportation is provided, then the $149 athletic fee would be recommended by me. However, if transportation is not provided, then the reduction to a $100 athletic fee would be recommended, very similar to the fall season. So that's still to be determined. If we have transportation, without a doubt, ski team would be the #1 priority because it's further away. It's a longer drive, and the bus is actually relied on as a warming space and as a changing space. I talked to our transportation director about the ability to safely put 21 individuals on a bus. Right now we have approximately 11 ski team members signed up, so space would not be an issue. And then if the school committee were to approve sports, in the past, the school committee has approved an 8th grade waiver for the ski team. I did talk to Dr. Allen. He is supportive of this 8th grade waiver. And for the past few years, the school committee has approved this 8th grade waiver. And currently we only have 11 total ELHS students that have registered for the team. So it'd be great to be able to have a few 8th graders that were interested help fill out our roster if the school committee approved it. So that's all I have from the slideshow, and Mr. Page and I can answer any questions that everybody has.
Kevin, specifically to the swimming spectators, since we would not have the ability to, for each athlete to have a family member, or would that be rotated equitably so all families would have a chance?
Yeah, definitely. We would rotate it. The way I foresee it is it would be every other meet, where half the team would be able to have one parent or guardian, and then the next meet, the other half of the team would have a parent or guardian, and they could trade passes, and they could definitely work that out if somebody wasn't going to use it. But I just, space-wise, I would not be comfortable going over 15.
Sure. No, I mean, as long as we're equitable to all families, because of the limited numbers. I know last year we used the limousine company. Is that a potential option for transportation as well? Have you looked into that?
Yep, it's definitely an option. The LPVC would be the top choice, and I have reached out to them. If they can't provide buses, I really feel that 100% this we need to provide transportation for the ski team, because it's far away. We don't want student athletes driving there, and that I'm hopeful that we'll be able to provide transportation for the other teams also, but I think ski team would be the top priority.
Pam, do you have any thoughts on that in terms of availability? I know you're waiting for more information from LPVEC, but for sports specifically, is that a long shot?
I have not had that direct conversation with the LPVEC. I don't know if Mr. Smith has at all, or no.
No, we've discussed regular transportation, but not athletics yet.
I can certainly reach out about that. I apologize, I didn't do that before this meeting.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I think as we move forward, we should know what we're up against, certainly. And I know there'll be challenges that we'll be facing in terms of busing. So yeah, thank you. If we could look into that, please. Sarah, go ahead.
Since this is based on a competitive model like the fall, what will tryouts be looking like? If the season's set to start in January 11th, when would tryouts be occurring? And then those might bring out larger numbers than what the teams are set to have in terms of roster. So how would that be managed in the indoor capacity?
Yep. So we would we wouldn't have to cut anybody from the swim team or the ski team. So we know that there would be no cuts in those sports. Ice hockey, the numbers are pretty low. The only way that somebody would not make the ice hockey team is if the numbers shoot up in the next week or so, or if it was a safety issue. So ice hockey, for the most part, looks like there would not be any cuts unless there was a safety issue with somebody on the ice or a lot more people registered. So the sport that we're really talking about is basketball. Both boys and girls basketball does have over 45 registered athletes currently. The MIAA is pretty clear that, and they say that we can only have 12 game day participants. So we're going to follow that model during tryouts and try to have cohorts of approximately 12 athletes. Those tryouts would be approximately 3 days at the absolute least. If the coaches need more time, then they would be encouraged to do the evaluation for longer than 3 days. The athletes would stay in their cohort of approximately 12 athletes for that entire tryout. And the reason for that is we do not want a situation where our entire basketball program has to shut down for 2 weeks. Worst case scenario, if there was a positive test, we would only have to shut down that one group of 12 student athletes. So the only time that athletes would actually switch groups would be when they actually make a team. So it's going to be a little bit extra challenging for our coaches. And if they need more than 3 days, I'll encourage them to take more than 3 days. One thing that I did learn from the fall, and I've kind of learned from the past couple of years as an athletic director, before we make any final decisions on athletes, it's important for me to sit down with the coaches and not necessarily go through names, but just go through the process. Make sure that the process was really a strong process, look at their evaluations, and really vet that process. And if we need to extend the tryout process based on how that meeting goes, we would do that. I've also talked to the rec department about athletes that don't make a team, and she is definitely interested in doing rec basketball at the rec department. So again, even though the MIAA says we can only keep 12 athletes, it's a huge priority that we find somewhere for all of the basketball players to have somewhere to play. So Don at the rec department wants to run some type of program, and we would encourage any athletes that didn't make a team to sign up through the rec department.
And when will those tryouts occur?
So the high school tryouts would be January 11th. So Monday, January 11th, 12th, and 13th. That would be the minimum amount of time with basketball before we finalize any teams. It may be the entire week.
And there would be no need to level any of the other teams. I know you said participation was lower, but there wouldn't be any need to create rosters for a JV versus a varsity. The numbers are too low for that, so there wouldn't be any tryouts for the other sports because there would only be enough for a varsity.
So ski team, we're actually looking for ski participants. So there would be no cuts with that team. Swimming has always, I've talked to the swim coach. We would most likely run 2 practices. So there's room for anybody that wants to swim. There would be no cuts with swimming. And then ice hockey is a tricky one. The numbers are low, but there's also a safety factor. If nobody's ice skated before and they want to join the ice hockey team, it's not an automatic opportunity to join the team because the safety is an important thing to consider. But right now the numbers are low enough. As long as people have skated and know how to skate, I'm pretty confident that there would not be cuts with ice hockey.
Ken, what do you need for numbers to run skiing? I know we've been chasing this one for a couple of years, and if you have 11 now and you're looking for that waiver again, what are you looking at for numbers?
So if right now I know of only one 8th grader that's interested, but there are a few athletes that have contacted me about switching to skiing. So I anticipate the ski number at the start of the year to be around 15 or so, which is it's a good number. For those 15 ski team members, it's really important to them. It's a great experience for them, but I think that ski team number is going to be around 15.
Okay. All right.
And
Thank you.
potentially next week or next school committee meeting, Kevin, for that waiver.
If possible, if you approve winter sports, if you can connect the 8th grade waiver to that, that would be great. If not, that's okay too.
Well, historically, what's happened is you've requested the waiver based on the numbers of those that have signed up, plus the anticipated numbers at Birchland. Also, I would feel more comfortable having it as an agenda item, and we don't have that tonight. So I would say if it still works, if time is not of the essence, historically we've done it, so I don't see an issue. Certainly open for discussion, but I would prefer it come back as an agenda item.
Sure, whatever you're comfortable with is fine with me.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee?
Yeah, I have a few questions.
Go ahead, Antonella.
Is there a freshman JV and varsity team for basketball?
Yes, so for basketball, there'll be a freshman team, JV team, and a varsity team for both the boys and the girls. One issue that we did have with the fall was trying to fill the game schedule for freshmen and JV teams. So there is the chance that they may not play 10 to 12 games. We don't know the exact bubble that we're going to be in yet, but we definitely have enough players for those 3 teams for both the boys and the girls program.
And on game nights, so JV would play first and then varsity. So how would the spectators and the players be handled after like the JV game?
Yep, great question. So the times would look different than previous years. So previous years, the JV game would always be at 5:30. The varsity game would always be at 7 o'clock. This year, as the PVIC is looking at starting the JV game earlier, so either a 4:30 or a 5 o'clock start, and then starting the varsity game 2 hours after the JV game. So that would give us time to completely clear the gym. So all of the JV athletes would completely leave out the exit doors. All the JV fans would leave. The area would get disinfected. We would have sanitizing wipes, sanitizer. The custodians would come in. And then after that first group leaves, then the second group would be able to come in. So at no time would the JV and the varsity team be in the gym at the same time, which is definitely going to look a little bit different. But it's the safest way to do it, and the game times would change also because of that.
And like the fall, is there still like no championships or playoffs and things like that?
Correct. There would be no championships this winter, no playoffs. Our goal is to get in those 8 to 12 scheduled games.
And how would the spectators be coming into the building? Is there?
So I did talk to Lori Paul from Food Services, and that's definitely, it will depend on when they're distributing lunches. So she said they may be going to less days of distributing. So at any time, if they're distributing lunches in the front of the building, spectators would end up coming through the pool hallway doors. If they're done distributing lunches and that's not an issue, then they would come through the main doors. So the entrance and exit for spectators for game days it'll be one of those doors. It'll just depend on when they're distributing lunches. I'll make sure that we're avoiding that crossing over of lunch and spectators.
And we won't charge admission, I would imagine.
Correct. There'd be no charge for admission. The one clear thing with spectators that the EA did say is that it has to be immediate family members. So that could be parent, guardian, brother, sister, grandparent, aunt, uncle. So immediate family members. That athletes wouldn't be able to give their spectator pass to their friend to come watch them play.
Can we be a little bit lenient with the modern family per se?
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, if
you know what I mean. I don't want to exclude someone because they're not a blood relative as much as they are a family member. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I foresee it being very similar to the fall, where I give each athlete 2 spectator passes to give to their parent or guardian, and then the thing I do want to avoid is them giving their passes to another student athlete, and then we have a student athlete cheering section. That
right.
It kind of defeats the purpose of making sure that families are able to watch their athletes play. So family members yeah.
Okay.
And,
any other questions
yeah, I just have,
for Ms. Page, Ms. McGee?
Will the bleachers be sectioned off or anything for social distancing to make sure people stay where they're supposed to stay?
So the spectator spot of the bleachers, there'll be taped areas for where they sit. There'll also be a document with protocol for the spectators to follow. The spectators, since it's indoors, will also sign in with their phone number. And I would keep that as a record if there was a positive test. They would not be considered close contacts, but I would notify them. So we would have that record of who was at the game. And that's for the spectator side. For the actual athlete side, I foresee us using folding chairs and not the bleachers. That way the athletes have a designated chair that they go to when they come off the court. And that way they're already completely social distanced. They put their bags underneath their chairs. So spectators would use the bleachers in a taped off area. Athletes would use already spaced folding chairs.
And are there teachers or someone working that's checking the passes and making sure that people are socially distancing?
Yep. So one of the key things I took from the last meeting was when you talked about Donna Prather being at all the events. I was at pretty much every athletic event in the fall except for 1 or 2 that Mr. Page covered, and Mr. Page was at a ton of them with me. So I think, I don't want to speak for Mr. Page, but it'll either be myself or Mr. Page at every home athletic event. Is that correct, Mr. Page? It worked well in the fall.
Yep, definitely, 100%.
Okay, if there's nothing further from the committee, I would entertain a motion at this point.
I move to approve the winter athletic program running from January 11th through February 28th, 2021, as presented this evening.
Motion has been made by Bill,
Second.
second by Sarah. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. That motion carries 5-0. Thank you both for your time this evening, and we appreciate all the work that you'll be doing with the logistics of this different season, but certainly know that the student athletes and families will be looking forward to the season. So thank you both for attending tonight.
Great.
Thank you, guys. We really appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, we will move on with the next item in our agenda. This is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, otherwise known as IDEA, Federal Targeted Special Education Program Improvement Grant.
Yes.
you, Pam?
Good
Yeah.
evening, everyone. So as Mr. Thompson just said, Dr. Welch, I'd like to thank Dr. Welch for applying for this grant. It is under the IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education. It is the Targeted Special Ed Program Improvement Grant. And I'm happy to say it is in the amount of $19,017. And it will be used to help the district with contracted services for IEP's services. So I would like to request the school committee approve this grant, and I can get that deposited and start expending it for you.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to accept the grant, please.
I move to accept the IDEA federal, what was it, grant in the amount of, do you have the amount? Because I can't find that paper.
$19,017.
Thank you. For $19,017.
Okay, motion has been made by Beth,
Poorly.
second by Antonella. What was that, Beth?
I did it poorly.
No, it was excellent. Perfectly worded, thank you. So motion made by Beth, seconded by Antonella. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. That motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Pam, on that.
You're welcome.
And then we just have a little bit of discussion on the future, which we are also desperately looking forward to. This is about the 2020-2021 calendar. We have, or actually, this is for this year we're talking then.
This is for this year. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was on last meeting and when we approved the next year's calendar. So we're looking to move the March 19th Professional Development Day to this January 15th so that we may have time for our staff to prepare for the hybrid model. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that, Gordon?
No, this was something that we had come to a tentative agreement on with the ELEA. The hope is that week, January 11th to January 15th, we can provide support and professional development to make sure that our teachers are ready and are able to plan for not only the hybrid model, but also the live streaming.
Great. Questions? Motion. You're on mute, Beth.
That's why. Was the union okay with the switch?
Yes.
They were. All right.
All right, I move to approve the calendar adjustment, moving the Professional Development Day from March 19th, 2021 to January 15th, 2021.
I'll second that.
Motion has been made by Bill, seconded by Beth. So just to clarify for those that are watching, that would mean that we would have school now on March 19th in the hybrid model, but
We would not have
there will be no remote school on January 15th of this calendar year coming.
Correct. So we'll revise the calendar that's posted on the website with that change.
Okay. So with that motion, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. That motion carries 5-0 as well. little bit shorter than last week. Just to reiterate, Mr. Smith did put out a beautifully worded message to families tonight, but please be aware that as we move forward to more in-person learning and we have our hybrid model, if on the survey you designated your student in one model and you would like it to actually be a different model now that we know what it is, please contact the school probably before the end of the calendar year. Gordon, would that be appropriate?
Yeah, the hope would be if we can get as many done this week and even into the vacation week, that will allow schools to plan and set up rooms and so forth.
Okay. And also in the message that folks can reference, but families will have an opportunity to change their learning model. First and foremost, students are always have the opportunity to return to fully remote at any given time. We don't hold that from people, but if they want to come the other way, if a student is opting out of the hybrid model and they'd like to come back into the hybrid model, they would have the opportunity to do that at the beginning of each month. And we would ask that families and students just notify the school the 15th of the month prior so that we can prepare for those students to come back. But the first opportunity for that would be a March 1st re-entry with a February 15th deadline of letting the schools know. And then consecutively throughout the semester each month, they would have that opportunity. Okay, excellent.
Well stated. You should have written the message.
I learned it from listening to you, Gordon.
Yeah.
Okay, we have reached the conclusion of our meeting. I thank you all for your participation and input. And with that, I would say that we have a meeting scheduled for the 4th of January. We hope to have some information as we get closer to returning to more in-person learning on the 19th of January. And also, Mr. Smith and I are still committed to creating an informational video. And again, you can look for that probably the first week of January or so. We'll try to get that out for folks with how schools are going to look, classrooms will look, what students can expect, some more information on the logistics of it all. So we'll get that out to folks as well. Okay. Anything else this evening from the committee? All right. I take a motion then.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn by Mr. Fonseca.
Second.
Second by Antonella. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion to adjourn carries 5-0. Thank you all very much, and have a pleasant evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.